All right, we are live. We got the insurance bros today, the whole team here at Fifth Wall. We're pumped to be talking about the unsung heroes of cyber insurance. If you are tuning in, just say hi in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. Honestly, guys, it's Friday, and it can be kind of hard to I don't know, not be total goofballs. I wish everyone listening in could have heard the chat we were having prior to. Wilson thought we were live before we were even live. That was the best part. He was like, "Listen, if you're listening to this right now," it was a good time. He was just practicing. It's just practice. But hey, we're here to talk about some good content. But first and foremost, we're all remote. So Andy, Wilson, how you guys doing today?
I'll go first. I'm doing great, I think. It's been a pretty smooth day, all things considered. But yeah, I'm doing great. It's Friday, big sports weekend. We got the AFC and NFC championships this week, so we can make some sports ball references. But yeah, everything's going good out here in the Berg.
I dig it.
Yeah, we got above 30 degrees in the south this week, so that's
we're
big,
60s,
right?
Like we're in the 60s right now. It's awesome.
No.
I might golf this afternoon.
I walked out back yesterday, and I was like, "What's that big shiny ball in the sky over there?" The sun hadn't been out in forever, and so
it was just the moon.
A little bit of uptick here.
Awesome. Oh, we got a couple of people listening in. First of all, Ray's a good buddy of mine. He lives down in Jersey now. He left us alone on Long Island and went down to Jersey, but still a good dude. Works in he's an underwriter, a buddy of mine, in the cyberspace, which is cool. And then Dean's here. Hey Dean, good to see you, man. And as we kind of work through all of this, and we got Mary here too, which is she needs a hat. We agree. If you are watching this,
Yes.
You actually are required by uniform code of Fifth Wall Solutions to wear a hat.
Right.
But the amount you wear a hat is actually proportional to how much hair is actually on your head. So there is that.
Which
that
is why
component.
I now have two on. Mary, I'll wear one for you.
There we go. But hey, so we're really excited. We're going to dive in today. Just because, we hear a lot, and Andy, you brought this to my attention. I think this is a really good point. We hear a lot in the cybersecurity space with MSPs. The main focus in losses is ransomware, right? I feel like every time you hear about a cyber attack, everyone's mind either goes towards ransomware. I guess also something like BEC, business email compromise, some level of cyber crime, e-theft, invoice manipulation. You run into those. Like those are the common ones, right? Loss of money, or I can't use my computer, right? And to be fair, ransomware is a big deal and is probably one of the most common forms of a cyber attack. So it doesn't surprise me that that's where most of our thought process gravitates towards, and what we want to focus our efforts kind of in on during those parts of the conversation around cyber insurance. But if you were to look at a policy, and this is kind of the key component, if you were to look at a cyber insurance policy, you see a lot more than ransomware coverage, and what Andy has called the unsung coverage heroes, the unsung heroes of cyber insurance. And Andy's favorite, I don't have the picture, Andy, because I'm lazy and I didn't bring it up, but you want to talk about, I can bring it up. You start talking. I can try and find it and I can bring it up. Give me a second here. So explain unsung heroes in general.
Right. But to your point before, to what you said, like everybody tends to focus on ransomware, right? Like it's what's in the news. It's the hot button topic. It's probably like the most easy part of this to understand, of like somebody's locked it down and they're, demanding money and we either pay or we don't pay. And what I have seen, particularly in the South, along this line over the last 5 years, is this whole idea, and this is at the client, like the end user end, right? I've seen this idea of like, oh, well, we don't negotiate with terrorists and we would never pay a ransom, so I don't need cyber insurance. And like in that moment, you're just like, Mm-hmm. You know, there's
There it is.
hey, there we go. That's the best unsung hero in movie history, right there. There she is, Nala. Love it.
So
Simba would just
this is
be
actually
he would just be hanging out in the jungle singing Hakuna Matata and eating bugs if it weren't for Nala. And nobody ever brings that up.
so here's my question to anyone listening. Who is your favorite unsung hero from your favorite
Yes.
movie or book
Yes.
or epic poem by Homer specifically? Just something random. Who would you say is your favorite unsung hero? I mean, I, I'm happy to. Oh, I want to remove that because that's annoying. I'm happy to start here. One of my favorite unsung heroes is Dobby the elf from Harry Potter because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
dude goes down in a blaze of glory for Harry Potter, and it is this amazing moment where you're like, I'm crying for a house elf that, for all intents and purposes, throughout the series has been really annoying, and now I'm upset, and it's justified because he sacrificed himself, and it was a big deal. Oh, sorry, spoiler alert, he dies. But
If you haven't seen it yet.
huge moment, powerful moment in the Harry Potter landscape. Stephen Deal is listening in. He says that his favorite unsung hero is Wilson. Just kidding. He loves your shirt, Wilson. Here's your chance, Wilson. Now's your chance to sport
There
it.
it is.
Yeah,
Here's your
hey,
platform.
Bob Nutting, if you are listening anywhere out there on LinkedIn to a cyber insurance webinar, please sell the team. Just
Sell it.
please. I've had 30 years. I'm 31. I've had 30 years. I don't even remember the last time the Pirates were very good. I think I was a tiny little baby last time they were in the any sort of contention. So Bob Nutting, if you're listening, please sell the team.
Well, as a Cubs fan, let me interrupt. As a Cubs fan, Bob Nutting, keep doing exactly what you've been doing for the past decade plus.
Amazing. Also, I mean, speaking of which, we got Mike Cole over here.
Heimdall
Michael
from
Cole,
Thor.
good buddy of mine. He said Heimdall from Thor. That is such a good. I mean, well, okay, put this two ways, right? Heimdall from the Marvel movie Thor, I'm assuming you're talking about, because Heimdall in Norse mythology is terrible. And also in the game God of War, which I just finished playing, Heimdall is the worst. So I'm guessing you mean the very specific Heimdall from the Marvel Thor, who is awesome. His eyes are piercing too. It's epic. Also, I'm a huge nerd, if you guys haven't picked up on that already.
We embrace that here.
And Stephen Deal definitely wants the team sold as well. So we got people on the same page there. But hey, so yeah, we are going to take a little bit of time here to talk through the unsung heroes of. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying, Mike. Yeah, MCU Heimdall. That's the way to go. I agree. But yeah, so we're going to talk through these unsung heroes of cyber insurance. And one of the reasons, I mean, first of all, having Wilson on here is super fun to begin with, but he manages and leads up our cyber insurance team, or the policy team in the MSP side of Fifth Wall. So we wanted to bring him in because there are some, I'm going to say, specific coverages that we tend not to think about when we're just thinking about a cyber incident. And I like to bring this up a lot when I'm talking to MSPs, because I feel like the point when an incident happens, when you have to navigate an incident, I feel like the first thing that happens is the client saying, "Hey, I hired you, Mr. and Mrs. Cybersecurity expert, to get me back up online when this happens. So just fix my computer. Can't you just fix it?" It's that easy, right? You just restore from backups and everything's fixed, right? And that's where our mindset sits, is that it's this really simple flip a switch, everything's up and running again. And if all you had on a cyber insurance policy was negotiating a ransom and that was all that was covered, you'd be good, right? That's how it works. Perfect. And there's nothing else you have to worry about ever. There's sarcasm in my voice for a reason here. So what we're going to bring up here, and what I want us to focus on, and Wilson, you can kind of take lead on this, but is navigating a breach. And so I'll use the word incident, but I'm going to use the word breach sometimes because it's scary, and this is a scary situation. Is it really as easy as flipping a switch to get us back up online? Guys, what are your thoughts there before we dive into the coverages?
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, there's so many things that go into the front end of discovery all the way through the back end of restoration, and then months and months after of calculating actual losses that could come from um, uh, uh, your reputation. Even I know that's one of the topics that we're gonna go through, but I mean, 8 to 12 months after, you could still be seeing profit loss from a cyber attack. Yes, you calculate those hours after attack with business interruption, but it goes on for up to a year or even further, even if you get into litigations.
Yep.
I mean, it could go for a while. It's not just switching a switch and you're back up and running. I mean, maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I like to talk about that was always the plan. Hey, oh, we're good. We're good. Nowadays, that's not how it works.
It's a classic, right? It's like, oh no,
Yep.
we're good. I don't need cyber insurance. That's what I have an MSP for. One of my favorite. Okay, first of all, total sidebar. Ryan Parkman, what's going on, man? This is one of my favorite things. Is that Ryan Parkman's mother is the secretary at the church I used to
Here we
work
go.
for, and I never knew he was as friggin' popular on LinkedIn as he actually is, until Andy started working at Fifth Wall, and all of a sudden I was like,
I'll take credit for that.
is
Yes.
this the
Yes.
Ryan Parkman, like the one who I've seen on like Christmas Eve when I would go back and hang out at the church with my parents? It can't be, and it is.
And the
So
best part
Ryan,
about it is that Ryan and I have never met in person. We just share this fellow like idiot vibe on LinkedIn where we like to
love
get
of meme
stupid,
culture.
you know. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, pretty regularly. So thanks for hopping on, man.
Anyway, yeah, Wilson, to your point, I mean that is key, right? The key component that we need to move past. Yes, I was Dean. Thank you. We need to move past the mindset that cybersecurity ends at protection, right? Like it's just, hey, I got all these things in place. I mean, I've done so many webinars with MSPs where it's like the objections of cyber insurance, right? And one of them is I have all the security in place, so I don't need insurance. Or you get the flip side, I don't need security because I already have insurance. And we know that logic is flawed on both sides. First of all, you're not getting good insurance if you don't have security, which means you probably have garbage, or you don't have good security, or sorry, you don't, if you have security in place, that doesn't mean you're not going to get hit by an incident. All you're doing is reducing your risk, but you can't eliminate it. So it's just kind of this flawed mindset, that we think that we only need half the equation to protect ourselves. So but where I think this really hits the road is, while cyber insurance is a huge part of the cybersecurity strategy, while you really should be, as an MSP, if you're working here, you should be implementing cyber insurance for your clients. You should talk to them, encourage them to go get it, or mandate it as some do. I love that. But at the end of the day, they really should be exploring that option, because there really is a lot that the MSP um, isn't, I mean, to be fair, isn't necessarily capable of doing, because it's not in their purview. Like you said, Wilson, legal stuff, forensics, credit monitoring, like there's that kind of stuff that's on there. And I'm willing to get or guess and wager that most small business owners do not have people on retainer to handle all that stuff either.
Yeah, most people don't know how to speak Russian and go out and buy Bitcoin either. I mean, I'd love to say that.
Solid point.
Yeah, most people don't. So, but yeah, the retainer thing's huge, and
Yeah.
I think that also begs the question of, what about endorsements versus comprehensive policies too? Which one provides those things for you? Because yeah, you could have a cyber policy that's added onto your business owner policy, right? But
Yep.
does it support you through an attack as well? Um, that talk about unsung heroes. What about those forensics teams and lawyers and ransom negotiators that actually come in and walk you through the incident?
Yeah, that's a
And
great point.
Cameron makes a good point there. I wanted to point out something that he popped in the chat there. You know, if it's a great point. If you know, have a fire extinguisher, you shall buy building insurance, right? And guess what? Let's take that to another level. You have a quantifiable number to put to that building, so you know exactly how much to insure it for, right? That's so it even makes buying cyber insurance even more important, right? Because there is no quantifiable number. How do you know how much is good for cyber, right? Like it's really hard to know in a culture where most people just go out and buy $1 million of liability insurance, and most people have $1 million of cyber, like how much is enough? And that consultation around, what does our revenue look like? How many records do we have on file? What sector are we in? What do losses look like over the last 5 years? Like being able to sit down and get into the weeds of knowing how much cyber insurance is needed. I would say, Wilson, I mean, I know we've been on multiple calls where, yeah, the issue sometimes is the coverage, right? But the issue sometimes is also that people are just massively, massively underinsured. They have no idea what their loss potential is.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, okay, so just to pull this, Melanie just commented, to your point, I have cybersecurity. I don't need insurance. That's the objection, right? I was in a room with 45 MSPs yesterday, and we asked the question, how many of you can prevent 100% of attacks? If anyone raised their hand, I'd throw them out of the room, right? We know that's literally impossible. And if you are soliciting your business as the ability to prevent 100% of attacks, probably setting yourself up for a lawsuit. I'm just going to be honest. There's your techie right there. But to that end, right? We've gotten into the conversation that an MSP has the wonderful job of reducing risk. Right now, insurance. Here's a little education for you. Insurance is risk transference. Right. That's the literal definition of how insurance works. So you transfer your risk to the insurance company, and they basically pay a portion of loss, right? So you have MSPs reducing as much risk as possible, and then you use the cyber insurance policy to transfer additional risk to your insurance company so that if something happens, when something happens, you're in a good spot to be able to navigate the incident. But that's the key, and where we really want to focus the rest of our time today is on navigating the incident, some of the things that we don't think about. Because again, yes, the ransomware is the scary one. The cybercrime, getting my money back, is the scary one, right? But then there are these other ones. So we want to break down a couple of these coverages and talk about them. So rather than put up a little pop-up for every single coverage, I'm just going to bring this one up on the screen here. So I'm going to take the chat away so people can actually see it. All right. So we're going to work through each of these because these are crucial to see on what we call a comprehensive cyber policy. Wilson, Andy, before we dive into these coverages, what's the difference? Comprehensive versus what else you can get? What do we see?
Yeah. Wilson, I'll let you take that when you see them mostly, day by day.
Yeah, comprehensive in a way, Will, like, hey, we're getting a comprehensive policy. These are the coverages that are added and different to an endorsement.
And sorry, I'm typing this in here. So
Okay.
what would you define as an endorsement then?
So yeah, I mean, let's just start there. Endorsement, or some people like to call riders, are added coverage, usually on a business owner policy or general liability for a business. These riders or endorsements say cyber on it, right? They were great 15 years ago when they were made. Are the bones still in circulation now and businesses still have them? Yes. They're still being renewed. I still see them out in the wild. I still see large businesses having these little endorsements. And these endorsements are, from the big names, the insurance companies that, hey, yeah, we can get you a rider, we can get you coverage. It's $200 added on. We got you, and you got some data coverage. Limits are low. I've seen as low as 10 grand up to 100 grand, maybe not more than that. Maybe sometimes you see $1 million riders. I mean, but does that cover all of the coverages needed in a cyber event? Does that support you through an event? Are they just going to pay you back, but you got to go out and find your own forensics team? Normally, yep. I've heard stories. Because we insure with comprehensive policies, I've never gone through an attack with a endorsement. I've never seen it firsthand, but I've heard third-party stories of people going through events, and it's not fun going out to find your own forensics team and everything.
And that's, I mean, to that point, my feedback there would be, I've always called it the warm and fuzzies, right?
Yep.
You've got your buddy that's been your agent forever, and they get you, your business owner policy, and on that, and I'm not throwing anybody under the bus here, but on that Hartford BOP or Travelers BOP or Liberty Mutual or whatever, there's this cyber suite, right? And you read cyber and they say you've got cyber and everybody's like, oh, we're good. We got cyber, right? And to your point, Wilson, I mean, let's just go directly at it. I mean, where I'm located, I had a buddy that was in that scenario, trusted his agent, been with him for a while, is a good friend of his. And, somebody internally wired $65,000. They submitted a claim. Guess what? $5,000 of cybercrime, right? So, I mean, the guy sitting there holding the $60,000 loss when the warm and fuzzies told him he had cyber insurance.
There it is. So, and to answer your question, Stephen, yes, endorsements are still a thing. Although I've actually stopped using the word endorsements on calls with MSPs and literally just call it trash, because that's where it belongs. An endorsement policy. I'm sorry. I mean, I might be wrong, but I can count on 0 hands when an endorsement is a better option, other than potentially if you literally are just getting started as a
Early
business and
revenue,
you have no money.
yeah, that's
Like
it. Early revenue, need cheap, need savings, your pension, every penny you're trying to stay open and make it past that first 12 months that small businesses don't make it through. That's it.
And I wouldn't even call it a good policy. I'd call it like you're doing this because you can't afford anything better. Right. It's more of like this is your only option versus this is the best option. And here's why. I mean, this is this part we're getting at right here. So let's go through some of these coverages, because this is why these are not found on endorsements. You're not going to find or if you do, they're like really low sublimits. Andy, can you talk sublimits? What's a sublimit?
Yeah, sublimit is a line item, and not all sublimits are bad, and some are standard, right? Like if I have $1 million cyber policy or a $2 million cyber policy, that policy is going to have a sublimit for cybercrime. Standard across the industry is $250,000 for cybercrime. So it's a line item of a coverage that's less than the aggregate limit of the rest of the policy, right? Some sublimits are extremely deceiving in that you think you have X coverage, but for this thing, you really have Y. And the ones that really suck are the ones around like ransom payment, right? I've seen some policies and you start getting into the weeds and, people don't really understand, hey, my ransom demand is going to be based on my revenue. They don't get that, right? Well, the Conti playbook was exposed a couple years ago. Guess what the second thing Conti hackers were taught to do when they got into a system? Go do a revenue search. Find out what the baseline is. See what you can ask for, right? So we'll see people, I've seen accounts that were, 40, 50 million in revenue that had a $25,000 ransom sublimit for ransom payment at a time when the average ransom payment nationally was like $500,000. And all of that is oblivious to the end user because it's like, well, my guy told me I had cyber and it says right here that it pays for ransomware. I had no idea that 25,000 wasn't enough. I had no idea that 25,000 wasn't even 1/20th of enough. Right.
Yep. That's super helpful. So yeah, sublimits are, I always like to define it as like you have this bucket, right? It's like your rainy day fund, and most of these line items on your policy could use the entire bucket, but there are a couple of them that are not allowed to use all the money in that bucket. That's a sublimit. Now, sometimes the problem is that you want to have as few sublimits as possible, but the real problem is with these endorsements, a lot of times the sublimits are very, very low, or the coverage just doesn't exist. So business interruption and recovery. This is one that gets tossed around a lot. And I hear this one even sometimes where you have people claiming this is not covered on a cyber insurance policy. So the misconception here is that this is not covered on a bad policy. So you really should see, but business interruption and recovery, what's that? Why is that helpful, Wilson? Why is that a helpful coverage line item to have?
Well, it's covering the losses of income. I mean, you're down for 15 days. What's your income loss during those 15 days? I mean, people don't think about it that, yeah, we got a cyber attack, but my business can still run through this. My employees are still, going to be able to work. We can just go out and buy new computers. We're good. You're going to lose business, no matter what industry you're in. Yes, those losses can be very different, but that calculation starts after the 8th hour normally on policies where it's listed. and then it can grow from there. So that business interruption following a breach is huge coverage. I like to make the example of you have a register out there, and if it stops dinging for 15 days, how much money's lost? That register just stops. You're not going to get the payments back. You might be losing customers. And that's again getting into reputation damage afterwards, but you want that money back, and that can be calculated. I mean, with a ransomware estimator that we can do, but this is one of the most important coverages that I don't see in endorsements. I see sublimited sometimes. Needs to be
Yeah.
at the full limit of the policy.
Yep. And to that end, right? I mean, this is one of those ones that's directly tied to a ransomware event potentially. Like if your system is down, you cannot use your system, and let's be real, most business is done online today. So if you can't use your system because it's down from ransomware, this is going to pay that loss of income that's going to keep you afloat while the investigation happens, while the ransoms are negotiated, while the backups are restored, like all that stuff. You're going to be losing your ability to do business. So to have that coverage that says, hey, look, starting on the 8th day of downtime, and Wilson, do they backdate it? So like after 8 days, do they then cover the previous 8 days? Does it
Well,
depend on the policy?
I mean, it can be different in different policies. It starts calculated
Sure.
after that 8th hour of being
Oh, 8th
down.
hour. Okay,
8th
that's better.
hour.
I thought you said
And
8th
then,
day, and
yeah,
it's like,
no,
woof.
it does not take
That's a
8
long
days
time to be
kick in.
down.
It's
Okay,
the
'cause I
8th
was thinking
hour.
like
So if you have a
I was
power
thinking like the
outage
rental
for
car
8
thing.
hours and you're down from your network, okay, well, it's a power outage.
Right.
But yeah, we're talking hours.
Perfect. Beautiful. All right. So, Andy, can you actually, we're going to skip a couple here because I think it is kind of linked. So sometimes I think business interruption and reputational damage kind of function on a similar plane. So can you talk reputational damage, what that's all about?
Yep. No, it's yeah, absolutely. So business interruption is going to be for the finite amount of time that the network was down, right? Like we were out for whatever 10 business days and we were back up on day 11. Business interruption is going to cover those 10 days, right? Reputational harm can and will carry out beyond that 11th day, right? Usually the period of indemnity on a reputational harm claim is 6 months, sometimes maybe out to 12, right? But most of the time 6 months. And what that means is let's use the example that I've used over the years. I've got a good buddy that has a mom and pop pharmacy, right? Like, and this is something everybody has a prescription either for themselves, their parents, or their child that they fill, right? Think about your most emergent prescription, right? Mom and pop pharmacy, you fill it over there, it goes down, you got to have it by Friday night. I got to have it. Grandma's got to have her heart pill, right? So that goes to Walmart, Walgreens, CVS. And guys, once, and I always ask my pharmacist when I would talk to him, be like, when you lose a script to one of the big box, what's the chances you're getting it back? Not good, right? So that revenue then bleeds out. That revenue loss then bleeds out in perpetuity moving forward, right? So that's the issue with reputational harm is like, yes, we've had a loss directly for the amount of time that we're down, but what about the the following months for customers, vendors, contracts, things like that that are canceled because of the reputational damage that's related to the loss of sensitive data, right? And this is one of those that people push back on me all the time. They're like, insurance won't cover that, will they? I was like, yeah, they will. And like, then they'll say, well, how do you make a claim? Well, you go back, you can go back in and say, hey, for the trailing 3 months pre-breach, here was our revenue. Here's what it looked like last year at this time. Right. And then for the 3 months, ahead, this is the impact that it had. So there's some number crunching that has to go into that type stuff, but absolutely reputational harm can be covered by a comprehensive.
But that's huge. Policy. Like, think about this, right? I mean, let's say you're a cybersecurity provider and you're encouraging your client to go out and get cyber insurance. So they go out to wherever and they get an add-on policy, a rider, garbage, right? So it doesn't have reputational damage. So they undergo an incident, and you know what? You have like the legal coverages built into there. That's great. Maybe you're able to have those covered, and Maybe there's some ransomware coverage built into that because sometimes you see that. And great. So you've navigated the front end of the incident. But now you start to lose clients. You're losing clients because they heard that you had an incident and they're worried and nervous that their data is not safe. So now your reputation is tanking and the insurance carrier is coming in. And while they have PR, they also have reputational damage. And I think those are important distinctions. They have a PR coverage where they're going to come help you navigate like how to talk about the incident, but they're also saying, hey, we're going to help you with loss of income due to your reputation taking damage over the extent of time so you can start to rebuild that image. Right. And that's huge. And that's not something an MSP
Yep.
or a business owner is going to have built into their service, their own services. Right. This is where this gets really helpful to see these additional things. Now, there are some interesting ones on here. Multimedia and IP liability is a very interesting coverage. I'm going to touch on that one real quick. It's really simple way to put it is oftentimes you see it like if you have liability because you've said something incorrect about someone on a post or on your website or something like that, that's where that could kick in. It's interesting to kind of think about how this could come into play in the terms of a cyber incident, like if there's an actual incident. But I could see if your system is taken over and someone comes in and they change up stuff on your website and start talking trash or sending out false emails to people that are there could be a whole lot there. And then on top of that, this multimedia and IP liability, back when there was that whole incident about a year and a half or 2 years ago, where there was the health service provider who had metapixel tracking on their prescription portal, and people started seeing ads for it. That created the potential for multimedia claims too. So there was a lot of broadness, and those are starting to get more defined. But it is a really helpful, important coverage to have. But in this age of metapixel cookie tracking, that's a huge one where you want to make sure that your clients are, uh, I mean, as best as you can if you're doing this. But clients really need to make sure that they are kind of staying up to date with notification policies around like cookie tracking and all that kind of stuff too. So that's kind of a weird one
Yep.
because it doesn't necessarily always relate to cyber incidents as a whole. Sometimes when you're filling out, and Wilson, you correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes when you're filling out a cyber app, they'll ask you, do you want multimedia? I mean, we put it in on every policy because we believe it should be there, but oftentimes it's like do you want this coverage? Right.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And just to make the distinction there, this is a third party coverage. I think this is the
Yeah.
only third party coverage on this list, too. We were just talking about reputation damage and business interruption. Those are first party, internal. This is affecting third parties, just like data being released and notification costs. This is the same thing as well. And very important to have. And some marketing companies and those industries as well, carriers won't cover this coverage and won't like to offer this coverage to those companies because they are handling sometimes third-party websites, and that's really all they do with the marketing, with the advertising and stuff like that. So sometimes this coverage is left off for certain industries, which I'm seeing.
Cool. And okay, so last one I want to tackle today, data replacement and recovery, because I think next week we're going to hit these other four because they're a lot more fun. But data replacement and recovery. So first of all, for everyone listening in, thank you for taking time to listen to insurance coverages because I'm sure it's fascinating. But recognize the business information here. Like these are coverages meant to help keep the business afloat in the event of the cyber incident. This is very different from getting the system back up online, making sure you're doing all that legal stuff you're supposed to do. This is literal, other than that third party one you just brought up, Wilson, this is literally stuff that is going to help the business survive post incident. Right. So it's
Mhm.
really important coverage. Is a lot of income loss and different things like that. So data replacement and recovery, what's that all about?
Well, are you asking me?
Whoever.
No, I got this. So it's the cost to restore, recollect,
Run
or
with it,
replace
Biggin. You
data,
got it.
including I mean expenses for material and working time. You're bringing in forensics teams to find clean up your system, and I like to make the point is not all the time when cyber attacks happen do you get all your data back. You know, you could pay the ransom. they don't have to give it back. Sometimes,
Yeah.
I mean, I think there was a great example, Andy. I think you showed me at one time that 30, I think it was 30% of the time that people get all their data back. And then 50% of the
Mhm.
time it's you get half of it back. Yeah, partial.
Partial. Yep.
So yes, they're going to clean it up, restore the data that you currently have, whether that's from backups and making sure it's all back to where it is. But some of it's going to get released. And what's the recovery from that? And what's the expenses? And how long does that take based on your size and makeup of your network? And that gets expensive quickly, very quickly. So
Yeah, that's
I
huge.
very important coverage.
Yeah, I think that's something that, again, we're not always thinking about because our
Yep.
mindset is getting back up online. MSP, get me back up online, fix my computer, it's not working. Then there's this ripple effect of things that can happen. And it
Yep.
doesn't all happen at once either. And I think that's the thing. We're very immediate beings, right? We want to know what our expenses are going to be right away. Planning for the future of what ifs is hard. That's where anxiety lives, right? So as we're working through um, that post incident world, right? So your business has now been hit with an incident. The thought that something like, oh, all of a sudden 3 months later, I have now found out that a bunch of my clients' data was actually released onto the dark web, that come back to bite you, right? And there's levels of this stuff that just can go on and live on for much longer than just the day you discover the incident on your machine. So there is something I want to circle back to here. Cameron asked a question. He's one of our brothers up to the north. So in Canada, the domestic markets provide poor coverage, so we place standalone policies with specialist insurers. Are you finding the same in the US, or domestic markets providing meaningful coverage? Um, yes and no, I would say. I would say the domestic
Mhm.
markets, or the mainline carriers, as we might call them here, the ones that every local agent has access to. Um, some of them have actually pretty decent forms. But there are also a lot of specialist carriers that have emerged that say, "Hey, all we have a cyber form, and that's what we do. It's comprehensive cyber." And it becomes kind of this wave. And Wilson, you see this on the ground, right? So sometimes those specialist markets offer better options, sometimes they don't. And it really just depends on where we're at. And you actually had a great post about this morning, that we're kind of emerging. Last year we saw softening numbers in pricing. This year we're seeing hardening numbers. Like, where are we at? That's how I would answer this. But what are your guys' thoughts here?
I can't really speak exactly to Canada just because we're not licensed
Right.
there and we're not seeing it a lot. But I mean, the Beasleys of the world live up there. I've talked to MSPs in Canada. I've reviewed policies that are in Canada. But I really think there it's going to keep evolving to the fact of waves.
Yeah.
How are they going to figure out underwriting? And I think that's going to be overall. And I know carriers both that interact in both Canada and the United States, and I really hope there's a baseline everywhere in North America, and where that's going to go. But I don't see huge differences. I don't think, but the market is a little bit unfamiliar on my end.
The market is the market.
Yeah.
Yep, and to that point, I mean, there have been some standard lines, carriers. I mean, look at Travelers
Yep.
buying Corvus, right? So some of them, right, have made the decision that they're going to push further into cyber, mature their program, invest more in underwriting and things like that, and others have just kind of sat pat, right? Like the cyber endorsement's the same now that it was in 2018. So yeah, it's always evolving, but there are some that have been a little bit more proactive than others.
Fair. Cool. So we hit on a couple of the coverages there. There's more we want to hit on next week, obviously. So today we went through business interruption, multimedia and IP liability, data replacement and recovery, reputational damage. There are a couple more we're going to hit on next week. I know this is fascinating content, but we try to keep it entertaining for you. Real quick though, as we start to wrap up here, for everyone in the chat, what are y'all up to this weekend? Doing anything fun? Because I am getting ready to board a plane to Florida. And it's supposed to be 65 degrees, which is not ideal, but you know what? It's warmer than it is here. So I'm
You get
excited
that
for
little
that.
heat from the sunshine, though. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
little
and it's
different in the ozone layer coming through.
true. And there's not going to
Yeah.
be there's not supposed to be a cloud in the sky. So I will take that, right? I mean, that'll at least be nice.
Yeah.
It's a baby moon because my wife's having a baby in April. So, you know, it was going to be a baby moon or a staby moon, which apparently is not a thing, but I think for my next kid, it's going to be a staby moon, and we're not paying any money to go on a trip. We're going to staycation, but staby. I'm coining that term. Watch it go viral on TikTok.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So it related on our baby moon, we went to Savannah, Georgia, and my wife, who is like not competitive at all, like by God, she got it in her mind that she was however many months pregnant, getting down to the end, and there was a lighthouse there on Tybee Island, and she was getting to the top of that lighthouse, and it's kind of one of those things where you're caught between as a husband, where it's like you don't want to tell her she's got her mindset on something, you don't want to tell her no, but at the same time, it's like, is this really the best idea? But she made it, she did good. It was the baby moon was I fully induced, or fully endorse, fully endorse the idea
That's a slip up
of a
for a
baby
baby
moon.
moon. That was actually really
Yeah,
funny.
that is a slip up. That's right.
Melanie
No,
is
that
going
fully
Melanie is
endorsed.
going two-step dancing and celebrating a friend's B-day. So
Nice.
maybe you can help me here.
Nice.
Two-step dancing, is that like line dancing with a partner? Like, what is that specifically? Because I swing dance and I love doing that, but I know that's not two-stepping, so not really sure what all that means, but
There's a rap song. You get the two-step. Andy probably knows that one.
Yep. Easy. Come on, man. You're telling.
No, I mean that
industry
was like
secrets
middle
here, man.
school
Come on.
era. From my end, I don't.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome.
I remember
That's so
that
good.
song that featured Missy Elliott, "Let Me See You 1-2-Step," but I don't think that's the same thing, so I'm just gonna leave it at that.
That was
Oh,
Sierra.
thanks, Steven.
If I talk too much about Sierra, my wife will slap me. It's a
It's a country waltz. There we go. That's helpful. So cool.
There we go. Yeah,
Oh, and Keith is just rubbing it in, saying it's a beautiful 83 degrees in Tampa today, for what it's worth. But look at the weather. There's a nice thunderstorm coming through that's going to bring a cold front, which, you know what? We're going to enjoy anyway. But hey, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in today. It's been a real pleasure connecting with everybody. Oh, well, apparently we need lessons. So Melanie, just so everybody knows, she is willing now to do a virtual lesson with anybody who wants to do two-stepping. She hasn't said that,
Yeah,
but I'm
there
just
you
going
go.
to assume that's what she means by this comment. So, hey, before she can comment something else,
We just
No, I'm just kidding. Before she can
I was
defend
about to say
herself.
we just thought we thought that Melanie was a transportation IT specialist, but apparently now she's repurposed herself as two-step specialist on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Step 1,
Private
get your
lessons.
security in place. Step 2, learn to dance.
Right.
All right. I like it. We're going to sign off with that. Everybody, it has been a real pleasure. Continue to comment on here if you want. We'll be sure to engage, but we really just appreciate everybody, and we will talk to you soon.